fall had come early to the island of Sodor. The trees were turning from green to red and brown, and it was colder too. Henry the Green Engine had been carrying freight across the island several locations. Sometimes he'd help Edward on his branch line. The bridges had been mended so they could now support bigger engines.
You do have a lovely branch line, Edward.
Just then, the Fat Controller arrived.
Good evening, you two. You've both done a good day's work. I'm very impressed.
Thank you, sir.
Now I have a job for one of you. There is an old line running through a dead forest. It is in need of restoration. I'd like one of you to take the goods train to the station by the lake tomorrow night so the workmen will have their supplies when they arrive in the morning.
Is this the line that runs by Gorsaflin?
It indeed is.
Oh, well...
I'll do it, sir.
Yes, Henry's the engine for the job.
And that's settled, then. Are you all right, Edward?
Yes, I'm just a little bit tired, that's all. Old Iron me, you know how it is.
Well, you've both done superbly today. Now get a good night's rest.
And with that, he departed for his house.
What's wrong with you tonight?
Nothing. Everything's fine.
You're afraid of something, aren't you?
No, Henry, I told you, I'm perfectly fine, just a little skittish today, that's all.
I know! You're afraid of the dark! Of course! That's why you didn't want to take the train.
Rubbish, Henry. You know I take my night train every Tuesday.
Henry only laughed and puffed away. As Edward came back to the shed that evening, Henry was telling the other engines about what happened. Gordon and James were both quite amused. Thomas and Percy paid no attention.
Afraid of the dark, Edward?
No! Henry's just telling you rubbish. I'm not scared of the dark. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to go to sleep in my very dark shed.
James, Gordon, and Henry all chuckled. Thomas and Percy were cross.
Shut your big mouth, Henry. No one likes you.
Exactly.
The next morning, Henry left to do his jobs, leaving Thomas, Percy, and Edward alone in the shed. The two tank engines noticed that Edward looked uneasy. They were both concerned. Are you all right, Edward?
Yes, I'm doing well.
But he obviously wasn't.
There's something on your mind. What is it?
Oh, just about where Henry's working tonight.
The two tank engines were puzzled. Edward, what are you talking about? Tell us, please. Edward sighed.
What I am about to tell you, no one else must hear. All right?
We promise.
Right then. That line is haunted. There is a dark tale associated with it. I'll tell you the whole story as best I can.
Thomas and Percy listened, and this is the story Edward told. The year was 1894, very long after the fall of the last Sudrian king. Over 75% of the population spoke English. The other 25% were the native Sudrics, who mostly hated the English and tried to force them off the island, thus starting the Sudrian Revolution. During the time, the English Sudrians had built the Sodor Mainland Railway. It was operated by very small, green boxy engines. One of the stations was at a small hamlet called Gorsaflin. It was mainly used for goods, but also had some passenger services. Many farmers would load their goods here to be taken to Kirk Ronan and shipped off. However, since Gorsaflin was a Sudric town, the farmers tried to prevent British engines coming on their soil during the Revolution. Eventually, they threatened to shoot any engine and crew that trespassed onto their turf. The leader of this embargo was Guto Chwildradl, a pure Sudric who was very proud of his culture and would do anything to keep Sodor from Britain. He was a very intimidating man, always wearing a dark coat and hat, and always carried a cane. One day, news broke out that a hostage had been taken at Gorsaflin. Of course, this wasn't true, but the British were quick to take action. They loaded the coaches full of armed men and had one of the little green engines push them to Gorsuflin for a nighttime ambush. Unfortunately, there was a huge amount of mist. Chwilderoddle had been keeping guard of the station that night. An owl hooted in a tree nearby, and he started hearing the chuffing sounds of an engine. He grabbed his gun and ran onto the rails, which was a huge mistake. He was shot dead by British soldiers. Everyone else in the village surrendered after seeing their leader dead. As a punishment, they were forced out of the village. The village was soon demolished, but the station was kept intact as a monument for the skirmish. Sometime later, the trees all suddenly died. No one knows what happened. One theory suggests they were poisoned by the smoke from the steam engines. Another theory suggests that a deadly fungus infected the soil. Whatever happened, no one had ever bothered to replant them, as the line was rarely used anymore. Now, there is a legend saying that whenever an owl hoots, a mist rolls into that old line, and then the ghost of Guto Chwilderoddle emerges from the abandoned Gorsuflin station. He tries to get his revenge he never got when he was alive, meaning anyone he catches is never seen again.
And that is the tale of the ghost of the old station.
Thomas and Percy were speechless. But Edward, it's only a story.
Exactly. That historical part really happened, but there's no such things as ghosts.
It is as real as trains with faces.
The three engines were silent for the remainder of the day. That evening, Henry was at Wellsworth getting his train ready. Edward plucked up courage and decided to warn Henry.
Whenever that owl hoots, a mist rolls in. There's a legend that when the mist's about, there's a ghost about too.
Oh, shut up, Edward.
Take care on the old line, Henry.
Ha! Stupid bird.
And with that, he puffed away.
Owls, mists, ghosts. Edward's going soft in the boiler.
More like drunk in the head.
Exactly. There's no mist.
But Henry was wrong. The line was covered in a blanket of fog. Henry found it rather spooky.
What's that?
Why, it's an amber lamp. That means proceed with caution. Who's there? No one replied. Let's just go on. So Henry crept slowly forward. But he soon stopped in front of a tree. It had a sign nailed to it, "Beware of the viaduct." The driver was surprised. No one warned us about that before, and look! The signal's red, and the gates are closed. And there's a frogman's coat. But where's its owner? You really need to work on your stuttering. But he suddenly stopped laughing as they saw a light move within the station building.
Ghost! Edward was right!
What the hell's going on here? I don't know, but something very strange is happening. Just then, they could hear a faint voice in the distance. They couldn't make out what it was saying, but it was very haunting. I think it's best we go back.
So do I!
And Henry hurried back to Wellsworth. The fat controller was about to get ready for bed when the butler came in.
Excuse me, sir, you are wanted on the telephone.
Who the bloody hell would be wanting something at this hour?
It was Henry's driver calling about the events at Gorsaflin.
I'll investigate this in the morning. For now, take Henry back to the shed and you can go home.
When Henry arrived back at the shed, the engines noticed he was as white as Harold and shaking all over.
Bless me, Henry. What happened?
Henry told him about what had happened. There was a long silence. Gordon finally broke it.
First the rain, then an elephant, and now a station. Whatever will you be afraid of next?
Probably just children fooling around. Those little rascals can be nasty.
But Henry didn't think so. It had been very real to him.
Well, I'm not going back on that line again.
The next morning, Henry's driver and fireman were talking to a workman about the unsafe viaduct while waiting for Sir Topham Hatt. "Lucky you didn't cross it last night. If it was damaged, you would have most certainly had a fatal accident." "Yes, but we don't know who warned us."
Ahem! I believe you wanted to see me. Now tell me, what exactly happened last night?
So the driver did. The Fat Controller was surprised.
If the viaduct was damaged, then I would have been made aware. But I'll send some workmen with the necessary tools.
And he walked off. Henry was feeling very tired, and he started to drift off. But before he could fall asleep...
What the?
The ghost is going to get you tonight, Henry.
Who are you? Damn it! Show yourself!
I'm not on pseudo anymore. I still haunt your mind.
Anymore? What do you mean, anymore?
The ghost will vaporize you to nothing.
Bloody hell, Henry!
Wait, what? Oh, phew!
Having more nightmares about the ghost, Henry?
Just then, Henry noticed Toby talking with an old man on a handcar. He had never seen this man before. He couldn't make out what they were talking about, but he heard the word Gorsaflin. Later, Henry asked Toby about the man.
"Why, that's old Billy the Fogman."
I heard you guys talking about Gorsaflin.
"Yes. He was talking about where he works. Why?"
Henry told him about what had happened last night.
"That is strange, Henry. I've heard that tale of the ghost that snoops around there, but it's a mere myth. Whatever you witnessed was probably not paranormal activity, but that does sound odd. I'll talk to old Billy about it."
Henry then told him about the dream he had with Diesel 10. Toby smiled.
"When we are frightened, we usually have strange or frightening images in our funnels. But I assure you, Diesel 10 is nowhere near the island. Don't worry, you're safe, Henry."
Later, Henry's driver spoke to Henry. "The viaduct has been repaired. We can take our train along the old line tonight."
But what about the ghost?
"Henry, I can assure you what happened last night was not supernatural. I've heard lots of children like to play in that area, and we're probably just having a bit of fun. It's being investigated, and they say that's the likely cause. We must deliver our train tonight." But Henry didn't really want to. But when nightfall came, he was feeling better and sizzling nicely.
Oh, I feel so relaxed this evening.
Me too. Hopefully this will be a more pleasant journey. Suddenly, an owl hooted, and Gordon thundered by.
Jesus Christ!
Oh, look! Henry spooked!
And the others giggled in their silly way.
Be quiet! I'm not scared!
But he was. The guard blew his whistle, and they set off. The trucks were being obnoxious.
Darkness falls across the land. The midnight hour is close at hand.
Creatures crawl in search of blood to terrorize your neighborhood.
God.
And whosoever shall be found without the soul for getting down must stand and face the hounds of hell and rot inside a corpse's shell.
You realize I'm not paying attention, do you?
And though you fight to stay alive, your body starts to shiver. For no mere mortal can resist the evil of the thriller.
Shut up! Just shut up! God damn it!
A little later, the fog came down. As they approached the same area, they saw the amber light again. Here we go. Then, unbeknownst to Henry, the gates mysteriously closed by themselves, and the signal went red. The trucks had seen everything, and they were spooked too.
Faster, faster! There's a ghost about!
Stop! Stop!
The train burst through the gates. A mysterious figure watched Henry go by.
Someone's been watching us!
Ahead was a landslide blocking the line. Henry braked hard, but the trucks hit some of the rubble and plunged into the ravine.
I think we've had a serious derailment.
Phew! That was a close one. It all makes sense now. The lamp, the gates, and the signal were all trying to stop us from a serious disaster. But who warned us? Just then, they saw a strange sight coming towards them. What's that? That's our ghost. It's Old Bailey, the fogman. Old Bailey was very cross.
I tried to warn you about the viaduct, and you acknowledged it. But when I warn you about this, why you no pay attention?
We're sorry, and he explained what had happened. Old Bailey laughed.
I heard that old story millions of times, but I worked this line for years, and I show you there ain't no ghost.
Is there anything we can do to thank you?
Well, I love to restore Gorsaflin back to what it looked like in 1894. Like rebuild the town and replant the trees. And I'd like to operate that old station. If you'll let me, I promise I won't spook Henry again.
I'd really like that, actually.
That sounds like a great idea. We'll talk to the Fat Controller. And soon, the Fat Controller was surveying the area.
This would be a fine place for tourists. We'll make it look exactly how it did before 1894. But it'll take a while, at least a year.
Well, this will be a treat for you, Henry.
It will, but you must replant those dead trees. We can't have this village in the middle of a depressing dead forest.
I think you were very brave to do this job, Henry. I knew I would have just given up, but you simply just tried again, and now you know the truth. So it wasn't as bad as you thought.
Exactly!
You did the job the Great Western Way.
Henry smiled. And in a little while, Old Bailey's wish was granted. The trees had grown back, and the village of Gorsaflin was back in business.
This is a lovely place, Mr. Bailey.
Exactly.
Well, thank you, Edward.
So, how much do you work on this line?
Quite a bit, actually. I used to come here as a kid. We'd tell ghost stories. I patrol the line to make sure no tramps try to live in the station or do drugs or other illegal stuff in it. But good old Ronald has never paid me a visit. Well, you and your station will be really useful. Let's hear a hearty thank you for the friendliest, ghost on the island. Thank you, sir. But it wouldn't have happened without Henry.
Well done, Henry.
And the engines all cheered. Do ghosts exist or not? Well, that is for you to decide.